Will the Committee of the Whole Finance meeting for Wadsworth City Council, Tuesday, January 21st, 2025 at 6 p.m. please come to order? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Copley.
Here.
Hanlon.
Here.
Hines. Here. Parrish.
Here.
Stugmeyer.
Here.
Rosbert.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Yurcheck.
Here.
You've all had the opportunity to read the minutes of the Committee of the Whole Finance Committee of January 7th, 2025. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes of the Committee of the Whole Finance Committee of January 7th have been approved. We're going to move into draft legislation for this evening, and all of these have an emergency clause. First resolution is the pre-annexation agreement. Mr. Morris, is that you?
It is. Thank you. We're kind of at the end of the beginning with the advanced annexation that we've been talking about for the past 6 months. What is in front of you is the pre-annexation agreement. We've talked about this in ED&P a couple of times. We had a workshop on it, which is substantially is the same as it was during the workshop. At this stage, we're asking for authorization for a person, in this case nominated Mr. Hiscock, to act as the signor for council, and essentially said these are the terms that we've agreed to, these are the terms that you've agreed to, so you know what it looks like, and they know what you're going to do with it on the back end. By setting these terms, this is not the annexation itself. The annexation is still pending. After 60 days, then it comes laid before council. Then you've got that 120 days to work from there. So this is not that, but this advises how you're going to rule down that road. Finishing this part allows us to start the next hard work, which is doing the development agreement for the TIF financing and getting the engineering started so that we can start working on some of the challenges that it has there. So that's what the pre-annexation agreement does.
Any questions from council?
No.
Hearing none. Mr. Yurcheck, will you take that one, please?
Yep.
That'll be resolution number 2501.
Okay. The next one is an ordinance with the water looping system. Who would like to address that? Mr.
I can
Hiscock?
speak to that, Mr. President. Members of council, this was an item that was discussed in public service. It is a project that has been budgeted for. Quite honestly, it's a $1.8 million budgeted item. And this ordinance would just authorize us to go out, advertise and receive bids, and then enter into the contract with the approved vendor of selection.
Questions?
Recommendation on that, 2 readings, or how you under,
Two readings would be appropriate.
would that be okay? Okay.
Well, we'll see. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we'll move that one to second then.
Okay.
Thank you.
That'll be ordinance 25-009.
9?
Okay. And then the next one has to do with water again, the Bird Street pressure reduction.
Very similar to the last ordinance, it is a request to go out to advertise, receive bids, and ultimately enter into a contract for the Bird Street pressure reducing valve project. This is an item that has been discussed at public service. It has a estimated, engineer's estimate, about $300,000. Again, this would, it's our normal practice of going out and advertising for those bids.
Okay.
And time restraint on that, depending upon, because other things kind of depend on that. Are we 2 readings or?
2 readings would be fine, but again, the only reason I'm making that recommendation to council is that the sooner we get through that process, the sooner we'd advertise and go for bids and award a contract. It's really council's call on that.
Council's thoughts on that?
I can't hear you.
I mean, I'm sorry, council's thoughts on that? Do you want to suspend and call that this evening, or?
On this one,
Yeah.
it's up to, the council.
Any thoughts on going out to
I
get?
think 2 readings.
Okay,
We've talked
well,
about this for at least 8 months, 9 months,
Right.
I would have no problem with,
Yeah,
suspending.
we have
all.
gone over this, and I'd be honest with you, we've done
And the other one also,
the looping system as well, right?
yeah. I mean,
Okay, well,
we talked about
I'll
those last summer.
suspend and call and see what, okay. I'll do the same thing on 09.
Okay. That'll be 25-010.
Okay. The next one is the Tolbert Street Improvement Project, Mr. Hiscock.
Very similar to the last two ordinances. Again, this is authorization to advertise, receive bids, and then ultimately enter into a contract with a selected vendor. It is for the Tolbert Street improvement, which is a budgeted $2.9 million project.
Is this another one that's been on the radar?
That's been
for some
discussed
time?
for way over a year.
Yeah.
It has.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll suspend and
Let's
call
get
that
that
one.
out to bid. Yeah.
That'll be ordinance 25-011.
And the next one to do with our bandwidth.
Mr. Testa.
Thank you, Mr. President. This item and the next item are similar purchases. Both of them are for 40 gigabyte circuits that provide the bandwidth for our fiber project and internet services. Both of these items are with vendors that are already in place. This is just a new year with both of these vendors, although it is the first time that both of them exceed the authorization threshold. The recommendation is this is an ongoing operating item would be to suspend and call.
We have questions from council. Okay.
I'll suspend and call both of those.
That'll be 25-012.
Okay, the next one has to do with the solid waste district and the tipping fees. Could you give us some in-depth information on that, Mr. Hiscock?
I believe you skipped one.
Did I?
Number
Number
six.
6.
He
addressed
Yeah.
them both.
He
said that
Yeah,
was-
but that would
Okay,
be
we'll do both
13,
those,
right?
so that'll-
Both of those.
Number 6 will be 25-013.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Hiscock, please.
Sure. So in regards to the ordinance proposed for the Medina County Solid Waste District fees, these are tipping fees and costs that we normally incur and associated with our provision of sanitation services to our community. The budgeted expense is believed to be about $1.2 million. This is a contract that we've had with the county for many, many years. It is something that I've wanted to bring to council for authorization. We haven't always done that, but I think it's important that the council understands some of those operating costs in some of our service divisions. So certainly it meets the requirements for authorization. Wanted you to be aware of it before we made payment and make authorization to make payments in regards to it.
Is there a time that this has to be adopted?
I would ask your consideration for suspending and calling this evening. The reason being it's an ongoing service requirement. It is a cost in that regard. And while we won't have $1.2 million in fees incurred by the end of the evening tonight, it certainly allows us to move forward with all of those costs associated with the service.
Thank you for that. And I just wanted, council, just so you know, we are under an obligation to take all our sanitary waste from both residential and commercial, and recycling has to go to Lake Road to the CPF. It's called flow control. We have no control. We can't shop like another source or take it right to a landfill, which they do. We have to go through the county, and this is just a pay. They tell us how much we're going to pay, and we have to pay. And that's not just our community, that's all over the county, including private carriers that would pick up your trash in a township or another city that doesn't have our sanitation like we do. So, Mr. Stugmeyer?
We'll suspend and call that.
That'll be 25-014.
Okay, thank you.
And the next one has to do with cable, Mr. Testa.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. This, too, is an ongoing contract. The purchase is made through the, basically, a purchasing co-op that supports independent television operators. What we're talking about is the video content, all of the channels that we provide for cable TV, and ultimately the streaming packages. The request here would be to suspend and call, as we need to renew that agreement this month. But again, we've used this provider for the last several years.
And this, I believe this amount was a little bit less than it was last year?
It is less, and in the past, it's been as high as $3.3 million. The reason that it's lower is because as the fiber project takes hold, the cost of content per subscriber is substantially less on the streaming model than it is the cable TV model. So each month as we transition more people over to the fiber project, this is where we'll realize our savings that pay for the project is in reduced video content costs.
What would you like to do?
I'll suspend and call that since it's ongoing.
That'll be 25-015.
Okay, next one is a legislation for purchasing an auto car, chassis cab.
I can take this one. Good evening, Mr. President, members of council. This truck is a new front-loading garbage truck that's replacing a 2012 in sanitation.
Okay. I know we've had some Macs in the past and we've switched over to auto car. I mean, is it?
We have, with the vehicle maintenance department, they're wanting to get some continuity in the fleet over in sanitation, and the support that they're getting with auto car is far superior that we've had to either Mac or Peterbilt's for the front load trucks.
Any questions from council? Mr. Stugmeyer?
What's the recommendation? I mean, is there one in the queue there that we need to
No.
get?
There isn't. They're to order. The sooner you can get it done,
Two
it
or
gets us
three.
in line, but we could.
Okay,
At
we'll go
least
to
two
second.
readings, that'd
Yep,
be.
we'll go to at least two on that, okay.
That'll be 25-016.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then the next one will be, apparently, it's the bed.
I'm sorry?
The next one?
Grinder.
Yes. So
Or
this
the-
is for a stump grinder.
Stump grinder, yeah.
It is going to be, the cost is going to be split between both the Streets and Parks Department with the large influx of stumps that we have now with the aggressive sidewalk program that we have. This is the machine that we had in the budget and discussed in public ways.
Does that have to be manufactured or is it on the?
No, we could go through your readings with this one.
Mr. Rosbert?
Yes, I'll move it to second.
That'll be ordinance 25-017.
And the next one is the vacuum?
Correct, yeah, this is for the new leaf machine that was passed in the budget. With this one, as we discussed in public ways, if we could suspend and call this, there is possibly a unit that we could get still yet this year if we get our order in now.
So I'll suspend and call that one.
Okay, very good.
That'll be 25-018.
And then the next one, my favorite one, is to advertise and receive bids for a street improvement program. Who would like to? Mr.
I'll
Hiscock?
handle that, Mr. President, members of council. This is our annual street improvement program. This year, we're allotting $425,000 in street improvements for the program. You'll see in the attachment in your materials, there's much more extensive asphalt and resurfacing work, but there's only about $425,000 that is street improvement dollars, if you will, from the levy. So that's why we're asking for authorization of this particular amount in regards to that. But I did want the council to know all of the work, street work that's planned for 2025 at this point in time.
Any questions from council? How much did we take in from our street improvement tax levy?
I do happen to have that. In '24, we took in almost 1.2 million.
And we're spending 120, 1.2, or 425?
425.
So there's is there room for other things? Are we going to use some of it for concrete? Or-
Some of it goes towards some of the other projects that are listed in that item. But
Okay.
the actual street improvement program, if you will, the asphalting, that work, that's the $375 for asphalt resurfacing and repair, and about 50 in extra work that's potential.
Okay.
Plus the Tolbert Street project's a big hit on that one also.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Mr. Rosbert?
I'd like to suspend and call that so we can get these out to bid.
Yep. Do we have all the bid books ready to go?
They will be. That was the intent of getting this to you early here in January so that we
correct.
speed up our timeline for publishing. I wouldn't tell you, Mr. President or members of council, that they're in total complete fashion as of today, but I think we're very close.
they'll be ready before the next meeting?
They should be.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I think we ought to suspend the call.
Yeah.
That'll be ordinance 25-019.
Okay. And the next one has to do with temporary employment. Anybody like to speak on that? Pardon me?
No, this one.
13, oh, geez, yeah, all right. On the zoning,
I could speak to that. Periodically, we'll have a use that comes in front of the city that doesn't quite fit perfectly with our current zones, or warrants needed to be treated a little different. So one of the things that we're seeing a lot of coming in is these storage units. These things are large, have a visual impact from those streets, and have very little economic benefit to us. Typically one person working them. So what we wanted to look at is some of the traffic issues, some of the setback issues, so that we can either through zoning or through business regulations fine tune what we're doing with these storage units that are coming into the city. So nothing that's already in planning commission. We already have a few of them sitting there, but anything new, what Mr. Kaiser wanted was 6 additional months to kind of figure out what to do with them, so that it's a lot easier to change them prospectively than retroactively. So that's what he asked for.
discussion.
I honestly feel this should go 3 readings. Okay, because
Yeah.
in fact, we're
Oh, at least, yeah.
limiting the property use and stuff. You can start looking at the stuff now, but I don't want to pass it, on one
Yeah, I'm not
reading or
asking
2
for a
readings
waiver
or
of
3
3
readings.
Any other questions or comments? Okay,
Mr.
Councilmember Yurcheck, put that on second reading?
Yep.
That'll be 25-020.
Okay. Now we're on to our temporary employment. Anybody want to address that, or you just,
Actually, there's another item to amend Chapter 153 before we get there.
wait a minute.
I have that at the end.
That's all we're at 16.
Does that need to go?
Sorry,
Where we at?
my
We're on
form's a little
You're
bit
on
different.
14. He was on 16.
He said his form's different. But-
Form's different, oh, okay. So if we're looking at number 14, it's contract with structure?
Yeah.
Is that what we have?
Oh,
You did it to him this time and not me?
I'm sorry. He printed one off the email.
That's
Yeah.
quite all
I'm
right.
sorry.
That's quite all right.
It was a stapling issue.
Not a problem. The structure personnel ordinance has to do with a correction, I think, that the law department caught on an ordinance that you had previously passed at the end of last year. It basically had the wrong year listed in that ordinance, and out of 2024, it should be for 2025 leasing agreements for employees. So it's normal structure employees that we use seasonally, hydrants, yard waste, leave rakers, those kind of things. We just had the wrong year in the one that you previously passed.
021, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Yurcheck, you want to suspend and call that one?
Yeah, I'll take care of that.
Take care of the correction. Now we're on item number 15. Was an economic development and planning.
Yeah,
About the CHIP
it was
grant?
Mr. Kaiser who was requesting that. It's my understanding that there was money that was over in 2023, $70,000 or thereabouts, that was closed out at the end of the year, but now as we reopen so that it can be appropriated and spent before the new money can be spent. That's supposedly coming. So that is a supplemental appropriation for the $70,100 that was in previously obtained, so that can go out for the CHIP grant. If I missed something, Ms. Fix, you
No,
can certainly.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Yurcheck?
Yeah, I'll take care of that.
Move that to second?
We're just moving funds from
We're just moving
2023.
funds? Okay.
Yeah, I'll
Suspend and call?
That'll be 25-022.
Okay. And number 16, Who wants to address that? That was subdivision regulations?
I can talk about it. Typically, when we amend a statute, we'll give you a red line, so you kind of know what it looks and how it looks different. This one was cut from whole cloth, so it was completely changed to the 153, which is our subdivision regulation. It sounds pretty easy, right? We're just taking big property and we're cutting it up, but it's a lot more complicated than that when we have certain times when we when does it have to go to planning commission? When does it not have to go to planning commission? When can you pull your permits? When can you not? When can you go pay money in lieu of completing a portion of it? So that's what the new 153 does. This was drafted by Mr. Davis in conjunction with the rest of us, trying to make sure that it does, the way we do it is reflected in the ordinance instead of in spite of the ordinance. So this is the way we do it. So that is what we're trying to amend so that it properly reflects that.
Mr. Yurcheck?
Yeah, I'll put that on second.
Perfect.
And that would be 25-023.
And it takes us to our agenda review for City Council. Second reading, ordinance 24-184. Mr. Copley?
I'm going to suspend and call that. They've got a 90-day letter of intent. I want to make sure that we don't lose that
Yes.
price.
Very good. Ordinance number 25005. Again, Mr. Copley.
Again, I'll move that one to third reading.
Okay. And Ms. Hines,
I'm going to move that to third.
25006, third. Okay. Administration, if there's any urgency that's changed since our last meeting, just let us know. Ordinance 25007, Mr. Stugmeyer.
Yeah, for the new enforcement officer, we'll move that to third.
Let me ask the administration, we have anybody close to being hired?
It's still in the posting period for that
So
position.
we're good
We'll
with
leave it.
third.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. 25008, Mr. Rosberg.
Move that to third.
And on third reading, Mr.
On
Stugmeyer.
the replat, I'll call that this evening.
Call. Any other business?
Mr. President, if I may, there were some emails back and forth about an hour ago between Mr. Hiscock, you, and as well as the clerk of council. It was in regards to items 5, 6, 7, and 8. In those items, the last, or in section 1, the last sentence should actually read plus 20% of the awarded bid amount, because those are municipal contracts. So I just noticed when I was looking through here, those hadn't been changed. So on 5, 6, 7, and 8, each of those items, we need to change where it says, including change orders does not exceed the awarded bid amount plus 20% of the awarded bid amount. So those 4 items should have 20% instead of the 10%, because they are municipal contracts, not contracts with the state. So if we could just make sure I just want to make sure we did that before council, when you print them out, Ms. Clerk, and make sure that they have the 20%, if we can make that change.
Sure, I'll go over that with you.
We can do that, okay?
We can go. Any other business? Anything from council? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Well, the regular meeting of Wadsworth City Council for Tuesday, January 21st, 2025, please come to order. Will you please rise and pledge allegiance to the flag and remain standing for the invocation? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty God, who has given us this good land to be our heritage, we acknowledge our dependence upon you for all things, and we thank you for all your blessings, including the right and privilege to govern ourselves in this free land. We pray that you would grant us all wisdom to make good decisions for the future of this community. Through Christ our Lord, we pray. Amen.
I have to get you back.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
All right. Copley?
Here?
Hanlon?
Here.
Hines? Here. Parrish?
Here.
Rossbert?
Here.
Stugmeyer?
Here.
Williams?
Here.
Yurcheck?
Here.
You've had the opportunity to review the minutes of the regular city council meeting for January 7th, 2025. May I have a motion to approve them?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes of the regular city council meeting for January 7th, 2025 have been approved. Are there any visitors who would like to address council? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and keep it to about 3 minutes.
I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Ken Spires. I'm an airport commissioner for the City of Wadsworth.
Your address, please, for the record.
Pardon?
Your address, home address for the record.
My address is 7405 Worcester Pike, Seville, Ohio. I have an airplane at the field. I own a hangar at the field. The subject matter I'd like to talk about basically is the condo hangar situation that we have down there. Myself and my colleague Jack Ryder have been meeting regularly with city officials trying to resolve some of the situations they have with getting the hangars in a paying proposition. A little history, it'll help you out. Approximately 45 years ago, I came up to City Hall with a fellow by the name of Jim Morrison. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Mm-hmm. Jim and I had a proposal to build condo hangar units, no cost to the city, of which we had, in turn, we got a lease for, we wanted 99 years, but we ended up with 40. We objected to that, but nonetheless, Bill Iron won. So we went on with that, and it was no problem. They made up a real good lease for us. But one thing I stipulated at the end of that lease was the fact that the city would negotiate in good faith with the people who at the end of the lease were there still to negotiate rentals to come into the city coffers. The whole idea was the city provided the land, the airmen provided the money to build the hangars. At the end of 40 years, the city receives an asset at which they can turn around and help to generate money to support the airport. Any questions? The problem we have these days is it's just a lack of movement on getting a new lease out and a new proposal for the people who want to rent the hangars right now. We do not have any revenue coming in. In terms of revenue, we have been trying to negotiate with the people who were in the hangars, and the city, between the city and those people, to come to some conclusion as far as a rental agreement. That never took place. It's sad to say that never took place. Based on that, I calculated it out one time, just recently, as to how much money has been lost in terms of revenue coming into the city coffers to go back down to the airport. It comes down to, there's 27 units there. You can get approximately market value, $3,000 per month paid in to that. And we have missed not only all the months, I'm talking about 3.5 years right now that we've missed collecting any money. Now, I perform this duty as an airport commissioner, duty-free, salary-free, and I don't expect any money for it. What I'm saying is, I'd like to see this resolved to the point where the city starts getting the money that they deserve, and we get those buildings down there on a paying proposition. Any questions?
We don't respond to you, but you're welcome to say afterwards, or if you have more to say, but we do not answer.
I've given you history of the situation, how it came about. I have nothing else to add to it. And one final thing is that 3.5 years constitutes about $126,000 that is missing and you don't have it. If we had had that, it really helps to defray the cost of running the airport. Quite simple. And I think it was a brilliant idea, not that it was my idea alone, but it was a brilliant idea to be able to construct some hangars, and the city ends up with assets helping them support an airport. So with that in mind, I'd like your consideration for that, or any questions.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the council tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to our agenda. Was there any correspondence?
No correspondence.
Okay. Let's move into committee and commission updates. Public Service Committee, Commissioner Stugmeyer.
The next Public Service Committee will meet on Tuesday, February the 11th, at 5:30 p.m. here in council chambers. That meeting for the rest of the year has been changed to the second Tuesday, and it will reflect that there in February. A couple updates that the Service Committee is doing. You will see several ordinances here relating to WCTV and cable television on the agenda tonight, as well as the fiber optic project has been going very well throughout the city. With everything is still on schedule. A lot of the in-home installations are starting, and so that project is moving forward on time and under budget.
Thank you, Councilmember Stugmeyer. Public Safety Committee, Councilmember Copley.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next meeting of Public Safety will be on February the 12th at 6 o'clock p.m. here in council chambers. Our last meeting was January 8th. We had an excellent presentation by our police chief, Chief Chafin, on the flock cameras that we're using here in Wadsworth. There's been some bad publicity, you might say, on social media about what the flock cameras do and everything, and Chief Chafin gave an excellent presentation. I'm sorry to say that the Safety Committee was not videotaped that night so the public could see it, but if you have any questions, I'm sure that Mr. Hiscock or Chief Chafin would be more than happy to answer.
Very good, very good. Public Waste Committee, Councilmember Rossford.
Yes, our next meeting will be Monday, February 10th, 6 o'clock here in council chambers. We've been working diligently with legislation to try to get some of our bid packets out for different improvements in the city and equipment, hoping that if we get the bids out earlier in the year, we get better pricing and keeping our expenses down throughout the year.
Okay, thank you very much. Economic Development and Planning, Councilmember Yurcheck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Economic Development and Planning Committee will next meet on February 10th at 5 p.m. in council chambers. We're continuing to work through a lot of our zoning regulations and codes, trying to clean those up and get through some very exciting annexations that could be happening this year.
Yeah, good work. Committee of the Whole met tonight where we discussed tonight's agenda. And it's quite full, so let's see. Airport Commission, Councilmember Stugmeyer.
Next meeting for the Airport Commission, date will be to be determined.
Okay. Stormwater Commission, Councilmember Copley.
Next meeting of the Stormwater Commission will be on April the 8th at 5 o'clock p.m., which is directly before the Public Service Committee meeting in April.
Very good. Shade Tree Commission, Councilmember Hines.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Shade Tree Commission will meet Tuesday, April 22nd at 5 o'clock here in council chambers. I assume that we'll be getting updates on our tree trimmings and the plantings that will be going in throughout the season.
You ready for a busy spring?
Busy spring.
Very good. Planning Commission will next meet Monday, January 27th, and the time is undetermined, but it'll be in council chambers. Cemetery Board, Councilmember Yurcheck.
Cemetery Board will next meet on February 19th at 5 PM in council chambers. One of the exciting projects we're tackling this year is we're going to be GIS mapping and digitizing the entire cemetery.
Nice.
So it's a project that's going to be very exciting down there. And we completed the mausoleum roof towards the end of 2024, so we shouldn't have to worry about
Very
that.
good work.
So,
Moving us into the next century.
yeah, digitize.
Cable TV Commission, Councilmember Hanlon.
The Cable TV Commission will next meet on February 6th at 4, and I would expect that we'll get updates on the fiber optic project that Mr. Stugmeyer referred to, the subscriptions, and then another thing that we usually hear about is the continued growth of the people that are subscribing to our YouTube channel, which everything basically that CityLink records and programming is always available on YouTube, and it's nice for people to get to know that, and to there's a lot of fun stuff on there, all their shows, and, yeah.
Very, very good. That's the future, moving it to YouTube. Senior Citizens Commission, Councilmember Parrish.
Yes, well, we'll next meet on Monday, February 3rd at 3:30 at the Suprema Center, and they have a plethora of events, both for socialization as well as informational, and if I were to list them, it would probably take me 10 minutes. But what I really like to say is that the use of the senior center is growing all the time. It is used tremendously. It's a real asset for our city. And it's going to be it is a warming center this week.
Very good. And I believe that's Mr. Hiscock. We talked about that today. It's the first time we've had a warming center in town, so good forward thinking on the administration's part.
So thanks, it's a team effort, so
Pardon me?
appreciate, it's a team effort, appreciate your support.
Very good. That brings us to the reading of the legislation.
Okay, we'll begin with first readings. This evening, we have resolution number 25-01 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember John Yurcheck and discussed at Economic Development and Planning. A resolution authorizing and directing the interim director of public service of the City of Wadsworth to enter into a pre-annexation agreement with Addison Wadsworth LLC and Alan B. Guerin, Eric P. Vance, and Kathy D. Davis, co-trustees of the Vance Family Irrevocable Trust, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move that we place resolution number 25-01 on second reading.
Second?
Rossbert,
Yes.
Stugmeyer,
Yes.
Copley,
Yes.
Hanlon,
Yes.
Parrish.
Yes.
Hines.
Yes,
Yurcheck.
Yes.
I'm sorry. All in favor?
Resolution number 25-01 has been placed on second reading.
Ordinance number 25-009 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Tom Stugmeyer, discussed at Public Service. An ordinance authorizing and directing the interim director of public service to advertise for, receive bids, and enter into a contract for the water system looping improvements project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I make a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance number 25-009.
second,
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Hanlon?
Yes.
Parrish?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Hines?
yes,
Copley?
Yes.
Rossbert?
Yes.
Mr. President, I call the question on ordinance number 25-009.
Here I have no objection to Councilmember Stugmeyer's proposal to call the question. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 25-009?
Rossbert?
Yes.
Copley?
Yes.
Hanlon?
Yes.
Parrish?
Yes.
Hines?
yes,
Yurcheck?
Yes.
And Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Ordinance number 25-009 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 25-010 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Tom Stugmeyer, discussed at Public Service. An ordinance authorizing and directing the interim director of public service to advertise for, receive bids, and enter into a contract for the Bird Street pressure reducing valve project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I make a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance number 25-010.
Second.
Copley?
Yes.
Parrish?
Yes.
Hanlon?
Yes.
Rossbert?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Hines?
yes,
And Yurcheck?
Yes.
Mr. President, I call the question on ordinance number 25-010.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Stugmeyer's proposal to call the question, Will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 25-010?
Hines.
Yes?
Yurcheck.
Yes.
Hanlon.
Yes.
Rossbert.
Yes.
Stugmeyer.
Yes.
Copley.
Yes.
Parrish.
Yes.
Ordinance number 25-010 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 25-011 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Tom Stugmeyer and discussed at public service. An ordinance authorizing and directing the interim director of public service to advertise for, receive bids, and enter into a contract for the Tolbert Street Improvement Project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I make a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance number 25-011.
Second.
Copley.
Yes.
Hanlon.
Yes.
Parrish.
Yes.
Hines.
Yes.
Yurcheck.
Yes.
Rossbert.
Yes.
Stugmeyer.
Yes. Mr. President, I call the question on ordinance number 25-011.
Here have no objection to Councilmember Stugmeyer's proposal to call to question. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 25-011?
Stugmeyer.
Yes.
Hines.
Yes.
Yurcheck.
Yes.
Parrish.
Yes.
Hanlon.
Yes.
Copley.
Yes.
Rossbert.
Yes.
Ordinance number 25-011 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 25-012 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Tom Stugmeyer, discussed at public service. An ordinance authorizing the interim director of public service to enter into a contract with Cogent Communications LLC for bandwidth required to support CityLink operations and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I make a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance number 25-012.
Second.
Copley.
Yes.
Hanlon.
Yes.
Hines.
Yes.
Parrish.
Yes.
Yurcheck.
Yes.
Stugmeyer.
Yes.
And Rossbert.
Yes.
Mr. President, I call the question on ordinance number 25-012.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Stugmeyer's proposal to call to question, will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 25-012?
Hanlon.
Yes.
Stugmeyer.
Yes.
Rossbert.
Yes.
Copley.
Yes.
Hines.
Yes.
Parrish.
Yes.
Yurcheck.
Yes.
Ordinance number 25-012 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 25-013 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Tom Stugmeyer, discussed at public service. An ordinance authorizing the interim director of public service to enter into a contract with Everstream Solutions LLC for bandwidth required to support CityLink operations and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I make a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance number 25-013.
Second.
Rossbert.
Yes.
Copley.
Yes.
Hines.
Yes.
Parrish.
Yes.
Yurcheck.
Yes.
Hanlon.
Yes.
And Stugmeyer.
Yes. Mr. President, I call the question on ordinance number 25-013.
Here I have no objection to Mr. Stugmeyer's proposal to call to question. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 25-013?
Hines.
Yes.
Yurcheck.
Yes.
Rossbert.
Yes.
Stugmeyer.
Yes.
Copley.
Yes.
Hanlon.
Yeah.
And Parrish.
Yes.
Ordinance number 25-013 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 25-014 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Tom Stugmeyer, discussed at public service. An ordinance authorizing the interim director of public service to pave the Medina County Solid Waste District for tipping fees and costs associated with the disposal of solid waste and generation fees to continue disposal services and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I make a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance number 25-014.
Second.
Stugmeyer.
Yes.
Hanlon.
Yes.
Copley.
Yes.
Rossbert.
Yes.
Parrish.
Yes.
Yurcheck.
Yes.
And Hines.
Yes.
Mr. President, I call the question on ordinance number 25-014.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Stugmeyer's proposal to call to question, will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 25-014?
Parrish.
Yes.
Hines.
Yes.
Yurcheck.
Yes.
Rossbert.
Yes.
Copley.
Yes.
Stugmeyer.
Yes.
Hanlon.
Yes.
Ordinance number 25-014 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 25-015 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Tom Stugmeyer, discussed at public service. An ordinance authorizing the interim director of public service to enter into a contract with National Cable Television Cooperative Incorporated, NCTC, for video services required to support CityLink operations and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I make a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance number 25-015.
Second.
Copley.
Yes.
Parrish.
Yes.
Hines.
Yes.
Yurcheck.
Yes.
Rossbert.
Yes.
Stugmeyer.
Yes.
And Hanlon.
Yes.
Mr. President, I call the question on ordinance number 25-015.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Stugmeyer's proposal to call to question, will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 25-015?
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Rossbert?
Yes.
Copley?
Yes.
Parrish?
Yes.
Hanlon?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
And Hines?
Yes.
Ordinance number 25-015 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 25-016 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Tom Stugmeyer, discussed at Public Service. An ordinance authorizing the interim director of Public Service to purchase a new 28 yield heel half-pack front-load sanitation truck on a 2025 Autocar ACX64 Class 8 chassis, including all standard equipment and operations from McQueen Bell Equipment Company through participation in a Sourcewell contract and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I make a motion to move ordinance number 25-016 to second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 25-016 has been moved to second reading.
Ordinance number 25-017 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Dan Rossbert and discussed at Public Ways. An ordinance authorizing the interim director of Public Service to purchase a 2025 Rayco RG552-R track junior stump cutter with radio remote control, a chip guard extension assembly, and all standard equipment from a AG Pro through participation in a Sourcewell contract and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move to place ordinance number 25-017 on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 25-017 has been placed on second reading.
Ordinance number 25-018 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Dan Rossbert and discussed at Public Ways. An ordinance authorizing the interim director of Public Service to purchase a Titan Pro Plus 11 leaf loader vacuum, including a heavy-duty industrial rubber collection hose, a directional light bar, dust control, and all standard equipment from McQueen through participation in HGAC by cooperative contract and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the three-reading rule on ordinance number 25-018.
Second.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Parrish?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Rossbert?
Yes.
Copley?
Yes.
Hanlon?
Yes.
Mr. President, I call to question on ordinance number 25-018.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Rossbert's proposal to call to question, will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 25-018?
Parrish?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Rossbert?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
And Copley?
Yes.
And Hanlon?
Yes.
Ordinance number 25-018 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 25-019 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Dan Rossbert and discussed at Public Ways. An ordinance authorizing and directing the interim director of Public Service to advertise for, receive bids for, and award contracts for the 2025 Street Improvement Program project consisting of the construction of improvements of certain city streets, parking lot repairs, and all appurtenances, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the three-reading rule on ordinance number 25-019.
Second.
Hanlon?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Copley?
Yes.
Parrish?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
And Rossbert?
Yes. Mr. President, I call the question on ordinance number 25-019.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Rossbert's proposal to call to question, will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 25-019?
Copley?
Yes.
Parrish?
Yes.
Hanlon?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
And Rossbert?
Yes.
Ordinance number 25-019 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 25-020 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember John Yurcheck and discussed at Economic Development and Planning. An ordinance declaring a 180-day moratorium on the issuance of any conditional zoning certificate or zoning permit for any public rental storage, mini warehousing, building project that has not been placed on the Planning Commission's agenda by the date this ordinance becomes effective and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move to place ordinance 25-020 on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 25-020 has been placed on second reading.
Ordinance number 25-021 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember John Yurcheck and discussed at Economic Development and Planning. An ordinance to amend Chapter 153 of the codified ordinances of the City of Wadsworth with regard to subdivision regulations and declaring an emergency.
Which one did you just read?
25021?
Oh, mine's different then. Mr. President, I move that we suspend the three reading rule on ordinance number 25-021.
All in,
We could move it to second.
Yeah, she read this.
Which one's the? Oh, mine's out of order.
Yeah.
here, I will amend them.
Structure personnel should be.
2-1?
Structure.
Structure.
No, 2-1, you were going to suspend and call.
21 structure, right?
No, I have it as 23. Oh, no, 21, yeah, structure.
2-1, he was going to suspend.
21 should be structure personnel.
Yeah, it was a structure personnel. Mr. President, I move that we place ordinance number 25-021 on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Ordinance number 16.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Call it again. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 25-021 has been placed on second reading.
You can read it.
We were going to suspend and call it.
That's
It was
that's
out
why
of
we
order.
that's
Okay.
because that
It's a
was the one that
different
just had the date wrong.
Down here.
No, it was out of order. We got
Oh,
it.
okay.
It was out of order.
I didn't
Down
get
here at the
that.
bottom.
Oh, I didn't know they put them all here. I apologize.
This here.
You can pass them down.
I
I'm
didn't.
reading from the addendum,
They just got dropped right
or no,
You didn't even know you had that.
No,
this is,
Yeah, the ordinance numbers don't match.
Yeah, the ordinance.
no, there's something wrong.
021 on here was structure personnel.
Oh.
On here, it's 153, which down here is
Okay.
023.
you're right. Okay, let me reread that. Let me go off. That's right. Okay. All right, so that was,
Mr. President, if I may,
Yes, please.
just from committee of a whole, I think we have to follow the numbers that were issued there because we transferred
That's
them
what you're
over
doing.
from committee of the whole.
Yeah,
so-
she's going to reread it.
Okay.
I just have to find the right
We
one.
need to.
Here, just read both issues.
Okay,
So do we need
but
to
that's not
back
the
that
goal.
out?
Do we need to?
Here, I got
Do we have
it.
to take that, do we have to take that out? We put it on second reading?
No, it's not.
We put 121 on second reading,
Yeah,
then we
so
were going to
this is-
suspend and call that. Should we back that out?
I think it'd probably be safest if we have a motion to, everything that just occurred on this last, what was being said as 021, to redact all of that to, and then go back over, because the original 021 should have been the structure personnel.
Right.
So,
I have it correct now.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to reread.
I make a motion
Yeah,
that we redact
Okay,
what we just read as
021.
25-021 and redo.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Ordinance number 25-021 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember John Yurcheck and discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract with Structure Personnel Incorporated for the calendar year 2025 for the leasing of employees from said employment agency to be responsible for the seasonal flushing of hydrants, the seasonal collection of yard waste and leaves, and other needs, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend the three reading rule on ordinance number 25-021.
Second. Second.
I'm sorry. Copley?
Yes.
Hanlon?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Parrish?
Yes.
Rossbert?
Yes.
And Hines.
Yes.
Mr. President, I move to call the question on ordinance number 25-021.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Yurcheck's proposal to call the question, will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 25-021?
Copley?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Parrish?
Yes.
Rossbert?
Yes.
Hanlon?
Yes.
And Hines.
Yes.
Ordinance number 25-021 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 25-022 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember John Yurcheck and discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance to make a supplemental appropriation of $70,100 in the 406 CHIP Program Income Fund for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2025, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance number 25-022.
Second.
022, sorry. Hines.
Yes.
And Copley.
Yes.
Hanlon.
Yes.
Stugmeyer.
Yes.
Yurcheck.
Yes.
Parrish.
Yes.
And Rossbert.
Yes.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Yurcheck's proposal, call to question. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 25-022?
Hanlon.
Yes.
Stugmeyer.
Yes.
Yurcheck.
Yes.
Parrish.
Yes.
Rossbert.
Yes.
Hines.
Yes.
And Copley.
Yes.
Ordinance number 24-022 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 24-023 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember John Yurcheck and discussed at Economic Development and Planning. An ordinance to amend Chapter 153 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Wadsworth with regard to subdivision regulations and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move that we place ordinance number 25-023 on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 25-023 has been placed on second reading.
Now we'll move to second readings. Ordinance number 24-184 on second reading, sponsored by Councilmember Ralph Copley and discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Safety to purchase one 2025 Freightliner 108 SD chassis, 400 HP, two-door cab, 1500 GPM pump with a poly body and 2,000-gallon water tank through participation in an HGAC buy cooperative contract and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance number 24-184.
Second.
Hanlon?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Parrish?
Yes.
Rossbert?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Copley?
Yes. Mr. President, I call the question on ordinance number 24-184.
Hearing no objection to Mr. Copley's proposal to call to question, will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 24-184?
Hanlon?
Yes.
Copley?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Rossbert?
Yes.
Parrish?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Ordinance number 24-184 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 25-005 on second reading, sponsored by Councilmember Ralph Copley and discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance to make a supplemental appropriation of $1,150,000 in various funds for purposes other than personal services for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2025, and to declare an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to move ordinance number 25-005 to third reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 25-005 has been moved to third reading.
Mr. Williams, may I interject for a moment? I apologize. I'd ask your reconsideration on 25-005. The reason being, 24-184 allows me to enter into that contract. 25-005, however, partially funds that purchase in 24. So if it is not approved and moved to third reading, I would not be able to enter into that contract until that subsequent ordinance is passed. Reason being, we can't enter into a contract without a purchase order in place. I wouldn't be able to do that until your next council meeting in consideration of 25-005. I apologize. I should have brought that to your attention earlier. I just thought of it as we read through the last two ordinances.
Mr.
Yeah, so we would
Brownfield.
just simply need a motion to reconsider the previous action on that ordinance. And if everyone, or if you get a majority vote, then you can go back through, re-vote on it. You could suspend and call.
I make a motion that we reconsider
The action.
the action that we just took regarding ordinance number 25-005.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Motion carries.
You
Okay.
read it again.
So I should read it again.
Yep.
Ordinance number 25-005 on second reading, sponsored by Councilmember Ralph Copley and discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance to make a supplemental appropriation of $1,150,000 in the various funds for purposes other than personal services for for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2025, and to declare an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance number 25-005.
Second.
Copley?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Hanlon?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Parrish?
Yes.
And Rosberg.
Yes.
Mr. President, I call the question on ordinance number 25-005.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Copley's proposal to call the question, will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 25-005?
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Parrish?
Yes.
Rosberg?
Yes.
Hanlon?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Copley?
Yes.
And Hines?
Yes.
Ordinance number 25-005 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 25-006 on second reading, sponsored by Councilmember Jeannie Hines and discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance authorizing the submission of a petition to the Board of County Commissioners of Medina County, Ohio, requesting a change in the boundary lines of Wadsworth Township so as to exclude that territory that, as a result of annexation, now lies within the corporate boundaries of the City of Wadsworth and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move that we place ordinance number 25-006 on third reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 25-006 has been placed on third reading.
Ordinance number 25-007 on second reading, sponsored by Councilmember Tom Stugmeyer, discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance to amend Section 35.32 of the codified ordinances of the City of Wadsworth to add the classification of code enforcement official in the Building and Planning Division and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I make a motion to move ordinance number 25-007 to third reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance 25-007 has been placed on third reading.
Ordinance number 25-008 on second reading, sponsored by Councilmember Dan Rosbert and discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance to amend Section 35.36 of the codified ordinances of the City of Wadsworth to add the classification of custodial worker in the Park Maintenance Division and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move to place ordinance number 25-008 on third reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 25-008 has been placed on third reading.
Our last one is ordinance number 24-185 on third reading, sponsored by Councilmember Tom Stugmeyer, discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance accepting public right-of-way for Silvercrest Road and public easements as shown on the replat of the City of Wadsworth Lot 7767 as approved by the Planning Commission on December 10th, 2024, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I call the question on ordinance number 24-185.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Stugmeyer's proposal to call the question, will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance number 24-185?
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Copley?
Yes.
Rosbert?
Yes.
Parrish?
Yes.
Hanlon?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Ordinance number 24-185 has been adopted. Any other business? Ms. Fix, I believe you have something?
Yes, I thought it would be appropriate to introduce our newly appointed city treasurer, Christian Boffman. Maybe he could say a few words, introduce himself.
Sure.
You can go to the podium.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name's Christian Boffman. If you haven't heard my spiel yet, I was born and raised right here in Wadsworth, graduated from the high school in 2012, then went on to Lake Erie College, where I obtained my undergraduate degree in accounting and my master's in business administration. Since graduating, I've worked as an accountant and property manager. And last Monday was my first official day. I had a great week last week, training with Kathy. Special thank you to Kathy and Lori Miller. I'm just grateful to be a part of this team in this city. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Any other business from administration?
Yes. So we actually have hired, the law department has hired a replacement for Brenda Fisher. Her name is Melanie Sontag. So if you get the opportunity, maybe stop up, say hi to her, introduce yourself. And then lastly, I wanted to invite everyone to an open house this Friday from 9 to 11:30 and then 1 to 3 o'clock, kind of sending Brenda Fisher off and wishing her best, you know, in her retirement. But that's 9 to 11:30 and 1 to 3 o'clock on Friday, so
Down
this
here?
Friday. Well,
Oh,
it'll
you're
be
going
upstairs
upstairs?
in the law
Okay.
department. So if you can make it, that'd be great, you know, and give best wishes to Brenda. So, thank you.
We can't thank her enough for her service.
35 years
She
with
did
the
a great
city.
job.
Great, yeah.
Great job.
Any other thing from administration, from council?
I would like to just give a shout out to the street department with this past snow and ice event. They had some very, very difficult conditions
Yeah.
to deal with the duration of the storm, the multiple rounds of snow that came through, and the very, very cold temperatures. They did a phenomenal job,
Yeah.
and really appreciate the efforts that they put out there.
Anything else? I was going to say the same thing, and with the colder weather and soon to be warming, we're going to see some potholes, so encourage the community and council members to report what you see before, you know, there's possible vehicle damage. But nothing
have a
else, I
running
entertain a
list.
motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.